This podcast is sponsored by the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce, hosting the Midwest Agriculture Summit June 28th to kick off the 2022 Midwest Agriculture Week. The summit will address agriculture, trends, challenges, legislation, and innovative technology with national businesses, elected officials, and industry leaders. Get involved at fmwfchamber.com.
Welcome back to the Inforum Business Beat podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Avanella. We had a busy week in the newsroom, so let's get right to it. Two former educators from Moorhead have transitioned from retirement to running a successful event venue south of Fargo. Mary Jo Schmid and Brent Larson co-own and operate Crooked Lane Farm in Colfax. The venue has seen quite a few changes over the years, including constructing a new farmhouse and relocating an old farmhouse onto the property. Now, Crooked Lane plays host to weddings, a bi-monthly concert series, car shows, quilt shows, and blacksmithing demonstrations. A new golf simulator plans to open in West Fargo in September. Gimme's will feature 5 electronic simulators so golfers can sharpen their skills year-round. The business will also serve alcoholic beverages and light fare like appetizers and pizzas. The Red Raven Espresso Parlor is on the hunt for a new place to call home. The coffee shop announced via Facebook last week that its landlord has opted to rent their space to a new tenant. The Red Raven had been given 30 days to relocate. Anjali Karna, an employee at the shop, said the Red Raven will look to flock to a new location downtown, either in Fargo or Moorhead. Horace will be getting its own Dairy Queen Grill and Chill soon. Co-owner Tanya Johnson told Inforum reporter Helmut Schmidt the ice cream shop is hoping to open in October. The Dairy Queen will no doubt be a welcome addition to the growing bedroom community, which currently lacks a true family-friendly dining option of its own. A pair of Fargo businesses are looking for new management. South Fargo's Breadsmith is seeking a new owner to come in and run the bakery. Current owner Rob Roberts told Helmut Schmidt he has an eye towards retirement and wants to hand over the ovens to someone new. The asking price for the business, not including a franchising fee, is $149,000. Meanwhile, downtown Fargo's taco shop is closing its doors. Owner Troy Thompson said that while the taco shop itself isn't for sale, the prime space overlooking Broadway certainly is. Thompson noted that profit margins for the taco shop were not sustainable for downtown Fargo's rental rates. For $95,000, a new restaurateur will get a turnkey operation, Thompson said, fully equipped with a new kitchen and dining area. In an agricultural state like North Dakota, farmland transactions are extremely common. Why then would such a sale make front page news? It's because Microsoft founder and billionaire Bill Gates was the buyer. The sale has even garnered the attention of the Attorney General's office, which is questioning whether or not the sale violates North Dakota's anti-corporate farming policies. Here to break it all down is Jenny Schlecht, editor of our sister publication, AgWeek. Obviously, I think a lot of our readers have already seen this story, but what can you tell us about Bill Gates' recent land acquisition here in North Dakota?
Yeah, Bill Gates, it's not in his name. There's no land record that's going to say Bill Gates, as far as we know in North Dakota, but he, through some companies he owns, bought some land in Grafton, North Dakota area for $6,400 an acre, which is not an exorbitant amount from what we know of land in that area. It's pretty normal. It was a total transaction of $13.5 million. This land was previously owned by the Campbell family of the Grafton area. They're a large farming family. Tom Campbell has run for a statewide office in North Dakota, and they're pretty well known themselves. And this was purchased through an entity called Red River Trust, which we're still trying to learn more about that at this time.
And what is Bill Gates' interest in buying North Dakota farmland in the first place? I mean, Bill Gates is a tech guy. We all know what Bill Gates has done. Why does he even want this?
Well, there's been quite a bit of reporting on this because Bill Gates is believed to be the largest owner of farmland in the U.S. Now, of course, because so many of these transactions, not just with him, but with a lot of other wealthy investors, get a little bit in the shadows with different names and companies. But he's believed to own a huge amount of farmland. And it started, it sounds like, because he and his then wife wanted to invest in other things away from just tech and get away from just being Microsoft. And this is just my speculation. Farmland tends to appreciate over time. It might not appreciate every year, but generally it doesn't go very far backwards. So it's probably a steady investment. Plus, if you own farmland and you know that there are people you can rent it back to, possibly the same people who you purchased it from in some cases, from what we've heard, you know that you're going to get a steady return every year.
And as you noted in your column this past week, the seller of the farmland, and as you mentioned here, is fairly noteworthy himself, and that's Tom Campbell. Why did he decide to sell, and how do you think he got hooked up with Bill Gates?
Those are questions we'd love to answer, and we don't know. Our reporter, Mikkel Pates, who is just our premier investigative reporter, not just at AgWeek, but likely in a lot of our company and really the region, he worked a lot of sources to try to get the Campbell family to talk about this, because I think there is a lot of interest in knowing. I live in a rural area. When you live in a rural area, there is some apprehension when it comes to big land sales of, is there going to be an absentee owner, and do they care about this community, and will they be part of it? And in this case, obviously, the Gateses aren't going to be part of Grafton. And so we'd love to know those answers of why. Why did you sell to him in particular? This isn't like they were offered a huge sum of money. This is a pretty normal land sale for that area, from what Mikkel found. And so we don't know those answers. We would love it if Tom Campbell or his brothers would want to talk about it, but so far that hasn't happened. And
what sort of precedent is there for a sale of this nature in North Dakota that features prominent figures on both sides?
You know, I can't say it doesn't happen, because I'm sure it might. You know, another of the largest landowners in the country is Artie Offit Farms, which obviously has a large footprint here in North Dakota as well. So these things do happen. I think the thing that we're hearing, and Mikkel is working on it as we speak, is that this might not be the first Gates purchase in North Dakota, and they might go back a lot farther than anyone realizes. He's known to own land in a lot of places, but we just hadn't known that he had any in North Dakota before. We're hearing that he probably has some in Minnesota. It seems likely he'd have some in South Dakota. It's all similar land. So I think it probably happens. The unusual thing might be that we found out enough about it to kind of dig into it.
And to kind of take us behind the curtain here a little bit, as you mentioned in your column, land changes hands all the time. But in this instance, obviously, we're talking about two high-profile figures involved in the sale. How did you find out about this in the first place, and why did you decide to pursue the story, knowing full well that, you know, these sort of sales happen quite frequently?
Well, we heard about it through basically just through people in our company. One person heard it in a social setting, passed it along to someone else who thought that AgWeek, being the ag umbrella of Forum Communications, was probably best situated to dig into it. And we kind of took it and ran. Like I said, Mikkel is an investigative reporter who leaves no stone unturned. So we knew once we had a little bit of a nugget there that seemed true, he was going to get to the bottom of it. As far as why we decided that this needed to be told, you know, just at the bottom, like we were talking a few minutes ago, it's unusual. We don't hear a lot of famous people in North Dakota. You know, I think of when Josh Duhamel came to Fargo and the Forum went all out on what's he doing here, besides being a North Dakota native. What's he doing? Where's he hanging out? Can we find out? And it's kind of like that. It's really, we don't hear about things like this. We don't, you know, Bill Gates isn't our neighbor buying the field next to us. It's strange. And the Campbells selling a large piece of farmland also seems significant, just given their position in potatoes and in the Red River Valley. But I think the impact, and I put a lot of time into this on my column, because I think people just sometimes think we want to get clicks, we want to get attention. The impact that an absentee landowner has on a community is something that those of us who live and work in rural areas really think a lot about. It's not that maybe they're great stewards of the land. I have no idea. So I'm not going to say they're not. But a large piece of farmland purchased by one large absentee owner means one less family that maybe is going to live in that town and send kids to that school that's going to be involved. It means that appreciation that happens on that land doesn't go to a local family. It means that there's just less local control. And not that local control always means that everything's going to be good, but it's just an awkward thing for a lot of communities to have to think about, what does this mean for us? And there's also the impact of that North Dakota has an anti-corporate farming law. A lot of people assume that it keeps things like this from happening, but obviously it doesn't. If you're not actually a corporation, you can buy land. You can buy land for agriculture. And it opens some eyes about the reality of what goes on. And so that's why we decided that this needed to be reported, with or without the Campbell family talking about it.
And it seems like there's a lot of unknowns here and things that remain to be seen, but do you have any expectations of what this could mean for the Grafton area, for the state, or kind of the future of corporate farming laws that you mentioned?
I don't. I think that's something we need to start talking to lawmakers about. What does this mean? Is there something we could, is there something that there's an appetite for, expanding that law? If you talk to North Dakota Farmers Union, I'm sure that they would want to find a way to close loopholes that allow things like this happen, maybe extend it beyond corporate and find other ways to block large entities. But if you talk to North Dakota Farm Bureau, who have been pretty against the corporate farming law, they're probably going to say these things just happen, which they do. And it's capitalism. And I don't know the right answer by any means, but I would guess that there's some conversations happening about what's the right move forward for North Dakota.
No doubt, then, a lot of things that need to be sorted out in the coming weeks and months as we learn more about this then.
Right. Yeah, there are so many stories that we could pursue off of this that I'm sure we will be, but it's not just Bill Gates. It's who does own the farmland, and how does that impact farmland values? How does it impact rental rates? If somebody owns a large amount of land in an area, they can really dictate what the rental rate is far beyond what the land that they own. How do these things impact farmers? How do they impact communities? Those are all things that I'm sure we'll be looking at.
And that was AgWeek Editor Jenny Schlecht joining us today to discuss all things when it comes to the Bill Gates news. Jenny, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
That'll wrap up this week's episode of the Inforum Business Beat podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Avanella. Stay tuned next week for another episode. Until then, be sure to visit inforum.com/business for all the latest headlines.
Inforum is proud to be a part of the Trust Project. Learn more at thetrustproject.org.